The photograph looked innocent at first glance. Just one quiet afternoon. Just one man sitting on the grass. Just one polo match in sunny Montecito. But what if that photograph accidentally exposed something much bigger? What if a single image revealed the reality behind years of carefully managed headlines, glamorous appearances, polished interviews, and endless public relations campaigns? Because this week, the world saw something impossible to ignore. Prince Harry, once one of the most recognizable and beloved royals on earth, was photographed sitting barefoot on the sidelines of a youth polo match, watching someone else's child play while his own wife and children were nowhere to be seen. And suddenly, people began asking a question many had been avoiding for months. What exactly is happening to Prince Harry? The image itself was simple. Harry dressed casually, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, sitting alone in the grass as he watched Artemio, the son of his longtime friend Nacho Figueras, compete in a local polo match just minutes from the Sussex home. On the surface, there was nothing unusual about it. Friends support friends. Parents watch children compete. Weekends happen. Life goes on. But gossip is rarely about a single moment. It is about patterns. And when people began placing this image beside dozens of other images from the last year, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Harry alone in New York. Harry alone in Las Vegas. Harry alone in China. Harry alone in Ukraine. Harry alone at speaking engagements. Harry alone at charity events. Harry alone at polo matches, again and again and again. At first, each appearance seemed like an isolated incident, but eventually isolated incidents stopped looking isolated. They began looking connected, and that is where the whispers started getting louder. Because while Harry keeps appearing alone, Meghan increasingly appears to be building a completely separate public identity. Look closely at the professional side of their lives. The Netflix projects focus on Meghan. The lifestyle branding focuses on Meghan. The interviews focus on Meghan. The social media content focuses on Meghan. The business ventures focus on Meghan. The carefully curated images focus on Meghan. Harry's presence appears to have faded into the background. His voice is missing. His face is missing. His role appears smaller every month. And that has created a new theory spreading rapidly among royal watchers. The professional separation happened long before anyone noticed the personal separation. For over a year, observers have quietly pointed out that Meghan's projects no longer seem designed around the idea of Harry and Meghan as a united brand. Instead, they increasingly promote Meghan as a standalone figure, building her own empire while Harry appears to drift further toward the sidelines. The question is why? Was it strategic? Was it practical? Or was it personal? Because while professional decisions can be explained by business logic, some recent absences are harder to explain away. Take the polo match. This wasn't another country. This wasn't another continent. This wasn't a demanding overseas tour. It was 10 minutes away. 10 minutes. The sport Harry has loved his entire life. The sport he grew up around. The sport connected to some of his strongest childhood memories. Yet Meghan wasn't there. Archie wasn't there. Lilibet wasn't there. Only Harry. Alone, and that is what transformed a harmless photograph into a conversation. Because people naturally began wondering why. The mystery becomes even stranger when you consider what polo represents. This is not just another hobby. Polo is part of Harry's identity. It connects him to his father. It connects him to his brother. It connects him to the world he left behind. For decades, royal photographs featured Harry at polo matches surrounded by family, friends, teammates, and supporters. Now the image looked completely different. A prince sitting barefoot on the grass watching someone else's child compete. The contrast was striking, and critics immediately seized upon it. Some described it as sad. Others called it symbolic. Some even claimed it looked like a man stranded between two worlds, no longer fully part of the royal family he left behind, yet not fully integrated into the California dream he chased. That interpretation may be harsh, but it is spreading fast because another uncomfortable reality keeps surfacing. Harry's circle appears to be shrinking. For years, one of Harry's strongest friendships has been with Nacho Figueras. Their friendship stretches back nearly 2 decades. Through controversies, departures, interviews, and scandals, Nacho remained loyal when many others seemed to quietly disappear. But yet even that friendship revealed something interesting in this photograph. Harry wasn't surrounded by a large social circle. He wasn't hosting a gathering. He wasn't laughing with the crowd. He wasn't standing among celebrity friends. He was sitting by himself, watching from the edge, watching from the sidelines, watching someone else's world continue moving. And for many observers, that detail felt surprisingly revealing, because one of the biggest criticisms surrounding Harry in recent years has been the claim that many of his old relationships have faded away. Former friends reportedly disappeared. Former allies became distant. Former supporters became silent. Meanwhile, the celebrity circle that once seemed inseparable from the Sussex story has gradually grown quieter. Names that once once appeared constantly alongside Harry and Meghan seem to surface less and less, and that shrinking circle has become another piece of the larger puzzle, a puzzle that keeps leading back to one uncomfortable question. Has Prince Harry become isolated, or are people simply seeing what they want to see? Either way, the photograph sparked something powerful because it captured a moment no public relations strategy could fully control: a quiet Saturday afternoon. What makes this story even more unsettling is that the polo photograph may have captured something the public rarely gets to see: the empty spaces between the headlines. Most people only see Prince Harry when there is an event, a speech, an interview, or a carefully organized public appearance. But what happens between those moments? What does daily life actually look like for a man who once had a packed royal calendar, military responsibilities, charitable patronages, palace staff, official engagements, and an entire institution organizing every hour of his life? That question is suddenly becoming impossible to avoid because the visible evidence suggests a dramatic transformation. Harry is no longer a working royal. The palace is no longer filling his schedule. The major media projects that once promised a new future appear to have slowed considerably. The speaking engagements seem less frequent. The excitement that surrounded the Sussex departure has faded, and when momentum disappears, reality becomes harder to hide. That is why the photograph hit people so differently. It wasn't taken during a glamorous event. It wasn't taken during a headline-making appearance. It was taken during ordinary life. The gap between projects, the gap between announcements, the gap where real life exists. And what many people saw in that gap was a man waiting for the next invitation, waiting for the next appearance, waiting for the next opportunity to step back into the spotlight. Critics argue that this is where the real crisis begins because professional uncertainty and personal isolation often feed each other. A lonely person can survive if purpose fills their days. A person with purpose can survive loneliness because tomorrow offers direction. But when both begin disappearing at the same time, the pressure becomes much harder to ignore. Meanwhile, another pattern has quietly emerged. More and more observers have started comparing Harry's life today with the life he left behind, not because they expect him to return, but because the contrast has become impossible to miss. On one side stands Prince William, whose responsibilities continue growing as his future role approaches. His calendar remains packed, his public appearances continue, his family appears united in public, his circle appears stable, his path appears clear. On the other side stands Harry, whose public appearances increasingly happen alone, whose projects appear uncertain, and whose future remains surrounded by questions rather than answers. And this is where the story becomes emotionally complicated, because regardless of where people stand on the Sussex debate, there is something undeniably tragic about the contrast. Two brothers raised inside the same palace, two princes given the same opportunities, two men who once stood side by side before the world, yet today they seem to inhabit completely different realities. Royal watchers have spent years debating the decisions, the interviews, the departures, and the accusations, but the polo photograph stripped away all of that noise. There were no speeches, no documentaries, no official statements, no interviews, just an image. And sometimes an image says more than 1,000 explanations ever could. The most striking part is that nothing about the photograph was dramatic. There was no scandal, no confrontation, no explosive revelation, just silence. And sometimes silence tells the loudest story of all. Because when people looked at that image, they weren't really seeing a polo match. They were seeing 6 years of choices compressed into a single moment. They were seeing a prince who once stood on Buckingham Palace balconies now sitting alone on the sidelines. They were seeing a man who once seemed surrounded by family, friends, duty, and purpose now appearing increasingly detached from all four. Whether that perception is completely fair almost doesn't matter anymore because perception has become part of the reality. Every solo appearance reinforces the next one. Every absence creates new speculation. Every photograph becomes another clue in a mystery people believe they are watching unfold in real time. And that is why this story refuses to disappear. The polo match was never really about polo. It was about what the image appeared to reveal. A man separated from the world that once defined him, sitting quietly on the grass while life continued around him. Maybe the photograph means nothing. Maybe it means everything. But one thing is certain. Long after the headlines fade and the commentators move on, people will remember that image because it captured a question nobody can answer yet. Is Prince Harry simply living a quieter life, or was that lonely afternoon on the sidelines a glimpse into a much bigger story that is still unfolding behind closed doors?